Hey guys, welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Becca and today I want to talk to you about some of the weirdest books that I have ever read. So I have 4 books to talk to you about today, and these are the books that when I was reading them, I wasn't really sure what was happening, but in the best way. So some of these books were very bizarre from cover to cover. Some of them were going along fine and then just had the weirdest plot twist. I'm not sure that I can call this a recommendations video because I don't tend to recommend these books because they are for a very specific taste. However, if you like bizarre books or you think you really would like bizarre books, then I guess these are some recommendations for you. So getting straight into it, I'm going to start off with the one book that I don't have because I have lent it out to a friend, and that is the Windup Bird Chronicle by Haruki Murakami. This is one of the ones that was completely bizarre from cover to cover, and it's very interesting because Haruki Murakami writes magical realism that is very much rooted in the mundane. So the Windup Bird Chronicle follows our main character Toru Okada. One day his cat goes missing, which very much unsettles his wife, who starts to act more and more strangely. He then also starts to get some very mysterious phone calls and he doesn't know who is on the other end of the line. These people keep leaving him very cryptic messages that he just doesn't understand. And this book is just a series of more and more bizarre events. Like I said, Haruki Murakami's books do tend to be very rooted in the mundane, so large sections of this book are just following Toru Okada's life. He likes to read, he likes to cook, he very rarely ventures outside of the area where he lives, and large sections of this book do just depict his daily life. However, there are other very strange parts of this book. At one point he goes to sit in a well for a very long period of time. I still don't know what that was about. There is also a 30 to 40 page section in the middle where some random guy comes to his house and then tells him like a 40-page war story that was just like randomly inserted into the book. In typical magical realism style, this book does not wrap up nicely, so a lot of these very strange things that happen just don't really make a lot of sense by the time you get to the end of the book. But regardless, I really enjoyed this for some reason, and I can't even put my finger on why, because magical realism just generally does not agree with me because of its ambiguous nature. I think one of the things that keeps you reading this book is every time one of these bizarre things happen, you really want to know why, and as the book continues and stranger and stranger things are happening, you will get slight answers to some of them. But like I said, with it being magical realism, you will get to the end of the book and there will be some things that just didn't make sense. I think it kind of worked for me because it did answer some of the things that I was questioning while still leaving others open. One thing I did really like about this is it has a very cyclical nature. So by the time you get to the end, it kind of comes back around to where the book started, which I thought was really nice. But I would say that this is probably the first very, very strange book that I read. And I'm very excited to read more from Haruki Murakami to see if that is a common theme in his writing, which I believe that it is. The next 2 books I'm about to show you have a very similar plot structure. The first one is The Hazel Word by Melissa Albert. Now this is a young adult fantasy, and even though it seems like it is going to be a traditional fantasy, it is very much an urban fantasy kind of thing. And this follows our main character whose grandmother wrote a notorious book of fairy tales. This book of fairy tales is now out of print, and a lot of people are really fanatical about this book to the point where our main character was kidnapped when she was very young because of the people who were obsessed with her grandmother's fairy tales. Her mother doesn't have anything to do with her grandmother and left home without ever looking back, but our main character has always wondered about this book of fairy tales that her mother will not allow her to read, and about the grandmother that she never knew. Now the reason that this is so bizarre is the plot structure, and the plot structure is the same as it is in the next book that I'm going to tell you about. But I would say that this is in 3 parts. So the first section of this reads very much like a contemporary, and then the middle section is just a series of very, very bizarre events that are like a wild fever dream, and then the last section is like an actual fantasy story. And the way that these are put together is very, very strange, and I don't think that I would have liked this book if it had been a traditional fantasy. And the reason for that is I went into this thinking it was a traditional fantasy. So as soon as I read the first couple of pages and realized that it was set in a contemporary New York, it had already thrown me through a loop. After that, I had absolutely no expectations of what this book or this story would contain, and so I was absolutely willing to go wherever this story took me, and it took me to some strange places. You get to a point in this book where where narratively it feels like this is going to be the end of the book, even though you are only just over a third into it. I did give this book 4 stars. I didn't overwhelmingly love it because there were a lot of very strange things, and while I appreciate the book was trying to do that, it was a wild experience, and just I did not expect this, especially from a young adult book. This is a very polarizing book, so if you do want to read it, I would either say go in with no expectations like I did, or bear in mind what I've said, that it is a story in 3 parts and things just get real weird. So the other book that has the same plot structure as the Hazel Word is an adult thriller, and that is Night Film by Marisha Pessl. So this follows our main character, who was a journalist. One night he receives a phone call from a man saying that the notorious director Francis Cordova is exhibiting some very strange behaviour. Now our main character Scott has disliked or been interested in Francis Cordova for quite some time. Unable to contain himself when he's received this information, when he's doing a television interview, he blurts out this information that he's received. That causes the end of his career, as Francis Cordova sues him, and he loses all of his integrity, and so nobody will hire him as a journalist. Now Francis Cordova as a director is known for creating very creepy and very twisted horror films that people get very obsessed with. He is definitely a cult director, and he has an intense fan base. Now this book starts off with the death of Francis Cordova's daughter. Her death is ruled as a suicide, but Scott doesn't think that she would have killed herself, and so he starts to investigate why she died. Now like the Hazel Word, this is a book in 3 parts. You have a normal investigation throughout the first third, and then the second third takes a turn. It takes a real turn, and then after that it kind of goes back to its normal setting. Now I think that this is definitely more well done than the Hazel Word, because instead of the middle section being really jarring, in this it feels like a reveal. So it's a plot twist. You've thought some things to be true through the entire beginning section, and then the middle section turns that on its head. That being said, it is still a really wild ride. You don't know what is real and what isn't, and it is just crazy to me. Now I again gave this book 4 stars, and the reason for that is that after you've had all of these reveals and you're back in your normal setting, Scott finds out the answer to his investigation, like why did this girl die, and it should have ended there, but instead it goes on for another 50 pages and adds a speculative twist. And I would have just preferred if the reveal and the reason that why she died was the reason why she died, without them throwing something else into the mix as a possibility. I would highly recommend this. This is another one that's kind of polarizing. It's generally well liked, but a few people don't like it, but I really love this. When I read thrillers, I like them because they're fast paced and they're kind of short. This is a beast, but I was absorbed through every single page of it. And finally, the weirdest book, or the weirdest trilogy that I have ever read, is the Southern Reach trilogy by Jeff Vandermeer. So the first book in this trilogy is Annihilation, and it was adapted by Netflix. I think it was last year. I did watch the Netflix adaptation, and they are different, so you can enjoy both. I definitely prefer the book to the movie though, because the movie was just a little bit too weird for my taste, and I didn't like the things that they changed. Some of the things they changed for the movie were some of my favorite parts about the book. So this series surrounds a place called Area X, and Area X is this seeming paradise that has popped up on the coast of this area. It's kind of covered by a dome. You can't go in and out normally, like you can't, as soon as you've crossed the border, you're in there, you can't get out. When this area popped up, a government department was created called the Southern Reach, and they built a building around the edge of it, and they were charged with like researching it, find out what it is, why it's there, what's going on, and all that kind of stuff. The Southern Reach have also been sending expeditions in to find out what is going on there. So they'll send like a journalist and a biologist and people from different professions who they think will be able to extract the information that they need from this area so they can bring it back and research it. Now this follows the 12th expedition, which contains 4 women who are going to head into Area X, and it chronicles their time in Area X. So it's very much contained to what is happening in that area, and it is insane. There is so much going on. I didn't understand a lot of this. I would say this is hard sci-fi because there's a lot of scientific things going on in here, and the thing that I loved about this is that I had so many questions, and I found the writing to be compelling, and I just needed to know what was happening next. I binge read this series across a month, and I never do that with series. I tend to take extended breaks in between the books, but I just needed to know the answers to these questions so much that I binge read the entire trilogy. So this book follows the perspective of one of the women in Area Area X, and then the second book follows the perspective of the new director of the Southern Reach as he is trying to figure out what is happening. Why are people who go in and out of Area X going missing or developing mutations, because a different thing seems to happen to every expedition. And while that is happening, his own life is falling apart. He can't trust the people that he works with. He can't trust the people that he works for that are giving him the information. And a lot of strange things are starting to happen outside of Area X. But we're kind of left thinking, is this all happening in this guy's head? Or is it actually happening? Now, the third book follows two perspectives. It follows this guy and the woman from the original book. But this series just had so many questions, and the thing that I really liked about this one is that the further you go along, you will get answers to some of the questions, while some of them are still left unanswered. Now, the thing that I don't like about this series is that, again, it left on a speculative ending. You never get the 100% truth. Not everything is answered, and I don't like that. I like to know why things happen. It's why I don't really like magical realism very much, as I said before. But this was just wild, weird, and wonderful. I would not recommend this for people who are very new to science fiction. I wasn't very experienced going into it, but it is quite technical and complicated in some of its language, so you may not enjoy it for that reason. So there you have it. Those are 4 of the strangest books that I've ever read. Please let me know if you have read any particularly strange books and what was weird about them. If you have anything that is like the Southern Reach trilogy, then please recommend it to me. I do have Born by Jeff Vandermeer. I bought that very recently and I'm excited to get to it, but anything that's kind of like that but not too speculative, because I can't handle that, then please let me know. Please also don't forget to like this video if you liked it and subscribe if you want to. If you head into my description box, you'll find a link to my Goodreads, Instagram and Twitter if you'd like to follow me on any of those, as well as a link to my Bookish body butter and candle website, the Instagram for that, and a 10% off discount code. But that's it from me today, guys. Bye!
Oh, you bite your friend like chocolate. You say you will go where nobody knows, with guns hidden under our petticoats. We're never gonna quit it, no, we're never gonna quit it, no.